Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Now we will be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 22nd of April 2019, and the news that would be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And so now with this, let us start with the first article. Now I have taken this lead editorial from the editorial page on page 8. Now this editorial talks about various aspects from a book that was written by a previous Chief Election Commissioner, Naveen Chawla, whereby the book that was written by him is called Every Vote Counts. Now this editorial in particular highlights about a specific problem, which is the illegal flow of cash during elections. Now this illegal flow of cash during election creates a huge problem in conducting free and fair elections within India. Now apart from this, the author also further highlights some measures that can be undertaken to solve this problem. Now as aspirants of the UPSC Civil Services examination, you would already be aware of the various problems which have been highlighted by the author within this editorial. And therefore what we're going to do within this section is understand about the problems and the solution which has been given by the author in a brief format. Now the first problem with regards to illegal flow of cash during election which the author has highlighted is that the politicians are moving their illegal cash for election purposes before the model code of conduct is being imposed. The second problem with regards to the illegal flow of cash during elections which the author has highlighted is that cash is being seized by the Election Commission based on tip-offs or works of officials during elections. But this system of investigation into the illegal flow of cash during elections is able to capture only a small amount of illegal cash. Now the third problem which has been highlighted by the author is that the current system of political funding is also not transparent, whereby it seems that most of the candidates cross the current limit of 70 lakhs that they can spend during elections. Apart from this, the recently introduced electoral bond scheme has also not introduced any form of transparency with regards to election funding. Now the fourth and the last problem which has been highlighted by the author with regards to illegal flow of cash during elections is that this illegal flow of money also creates a problem of candidates with criminal backgrounds also appearing within elections. Now these are the four main problems which the author has highlighted with regards to the illegal flow of cash during elections within India, and how this illegal flow of cash during elections is leading to a problem where the elections are not considered to be free and fair. And according to the author, the Election Commission needs to take several measures so as to solve this problem of the illegal flow of cash during elections. Now based on this, the author has given two solutions which can be undertaken by the Election Commission. Now the first solution given by the author is that the Election Commission must form a conference after the completion of the general elections of 2019, whereby in this conference all stakeholders, which includes recognized political parties both from the central and states, and the best constitutional and legal minds of India, need to come together and find a solution to stopping this illegal flow of cash during elections. The second solution which has been highlighted by the author is that the Election Commission has tremendous power which has been granted to it by the Constitution of India, whereby if the Election Commission uses these powers to their full potential in a fair manner, it can ensure free and fair elections within India. Whereby in this case, the author gives the example of TN Session, whereby TN Session sir led to various electoral reforms within India by utilizing the power that was given to the Election Commission under the Constitution of India so as to ensure free and fair elections. Now these are the two main potential solutions which have been highlighted by the author so as to stop the illegal flow of cash during elections. Now as we have already discussed, these problems and the solutions which have been highlighted by the author are simple in nature, and as UPSC aspirants, you would already be aware of them. But nevertheless, hopefully you have understood as to what the author talks about within this editorial. Now this editorial should be seen from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section Governance and within the section Constitution, wherein specifically within the subsection, it should be seen from the perspective of important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability, and also with regards to the responsibilities of various constitutional bodies, in particular the Election Commission. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 9. Now this editorial in particular talks about the Press Freedom Index, whereby what has happened is that India has currently dropped 2 places within the rankings which is given in the Press Freedom Index, whereby earlier India was ranked 138 in a total compilation of 180 countries, whereby what has happened now is that India has dropped 2 places within the ranking and is currently ranked 140. Now the main reason as to why India has dropped 2 places within the ranking in the Press Freedom Index is because of the threats and the political violence against journalists which has happened during the ongoing Lok Sabha elections. Now what is required for you to understand from this article is about the Press Freedom Index. And we need to understand about the Press Freedom Index from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now this Press Freedom Index is given out by the organization Reporters Without Borders. Now the second aspect that you need to know is that this Press Freedom Index contains 7 parameters on which the countries are ranked upon. Now these 7 parameters are pluralism, media independence, media environment and self-censorship, legislative framework, transparency, media infrastructure, and the last one being abuses. Whereby the last one, abuses, was a recent addition to the parameters to the Press Freedom Index, whereby it calculates the amount of political violence against reporters from state and non-state actors, whereby it is seen that the political violence against reporters within India has increased due to the attacks by Maoists on journalists within India. Now with regards to the Indian ranking, whereby in the current Press Freedom Index of 2019, India's rank is 140, while in the previous Press Freedom Index of 2018, India's ranking was 138. Now these are the main factors that you need to remember about the Press Freedom Index from the perspective of your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 13. Now what this article talks about is the solar thermal power industry. Now we're going to understand about this article from the perspective of GS paper 3, first within the section economic development and second within the section environment, whereby within the subsection economic development, solar thermal power industry would be seen from the perspective of infrastructure. Now we're going to understand this article in 4 aspects. First, as to what is the solar thermal industry. Secondly, we're going to understand on how the solar thermal industry is different from the solar photovoltaic industry or the solar PV industry. The third aspect that we're going to understand are the problems with the solar thermal industry. Now the fourth and the final aspect that we're going to understand are the various potential solutions to solve the problems that is currently being faced by the solar thermal industry. So now let us first understand as to what is the solar thermal industry. Now basically in the solar thermal industry, it uses collectors which are in the form of tubes, flat plates or reflectors which lie open to the sun. Now the main working procedure of these solar thermals is that they focus sunlight on a thermic fluid. Now thermic fluids can be in the form of oil, and in simple terms what generally happens is that these solar collectors, which are either in the form of tubes, flat plates or reflectors, contain a particular oil, and through the use of sunlight this oil is then heated. Now through this heated oil, heat is then transferred to water to cause it to boil. Now in several temples across India, these solar thermals are then used to boil water, which is then used to cook food. Apart from this, it is also used for drying of spices, fish, wet paint, and also as solar thermal heaters. Now the second aspect that you need to understand is that solar thermal is different from solar photovoltaic or solar PV. And the main difference is in the methodology of their working, whereby in solar PV, the photons from the sun rays knock off electrons in the semiconductor material. And what this creates is a stream of electrons which then produces electricity. And then this electricity is then used to generate heat energy. Apart from the methodology of their working, there is also a difference within their outcome, whereby 100 square meter of collected area in solar thermal can generate heat energy of around 40 kilowatts, and this would cost about 7.5 lakhs. However, to generate 40 kilowatt of electric energy from solar PV, it would cost around 20 lakhs. Whereby the main reason is that semiconductor material is much more costlier than thermic fluid. And secondly, electricity is then used to make heat energy. However, with regards to solar thermal, they directly convert into heat energy. And it is because of this reason solar thermals are much cheaper than solar PV. Now the third aspect that we're going to understand is what are the problems with the solar thermal sector. Now the first problem which has been highlighted in the article is that the solar thermal consumers are provided subsidy by the government of India. However, the procedure to receive this subsidy is extremely complicated. Now, because the procedure to receive this subsidy is extremely complicated, several small consumers are therefore not attracted towards using solar thermal. Apart from this, one of the complaints from the industry is that they are not provided enough subsidies or help from the government of India, whereby they are not able to compete against the cheaper Chinese imports within the solar thermal sector. The third problem with the solar thermal sector is that solar PV is actually much more popular and therefore grabs greater consumer attention, whereby people are not aware of that the solar thermal sector is actually much cheaper in usage as compared to solar PV. Now, the fourth and the last problem with regards to the solar thermal sector is that setting up solar thermal requires a lot of space. And apart from this, the maximum temperature that can be reached is only around 200 degrees Celsius. And therefore, both of these aspects restrain the usage of solar thermal, whereby they're not able to be used by smaller industrial units which do not have a lot of space. And apart from this, several industries within India also require temperatures above 200 degrees Celsius, and for them, solar PV therefore becomes much more useful. So now, after understanding the various problems with the solar thermal sector, let us understand the various potential solutions which have been highlighted within this article. Now, the first solution highlighted in the article is of a solar payback project. Now, this solar payback project is being funded by Germany under the International Climate Initiative. Now, this program is going to work in 4 countries, first being India, second being South Africa, third being Mexico, and the fourth being Brazil. And within India itself, this solar payback project under the International Climate Initiative would focus upon 3 areas, whereby it would ensure that the dairy sector, the food processing and the pharmaceutical sectors, and the auto component sector start using solar thermal. Apart from this, one of the demands from the industry is for an OPEX model, whereby under this model, industrial players who are already within the field of solar thermal would own the equipment and provide energy to the consumer industry. And therefore, this consumer industry would only need to pay for the heat that is being delivered. Now, this is a similar project as compared to solar PV, whereby what happens in solar PV is that there would be one company which would set up a solar energy plant, and this solar energy plant would then be providing or delivering electricity to those who need it. And similarly, in the OPEX model, what would happen is that various industrial players within the solar thermal power plant industry would set up solar thermal power plants. And through these solar thermal power plants, they would then distribute and deliver heat to those industries which need it. Now, the third potential solution is a common demand from the industry for a center for solar drying, whereby the Center for Solar Drying would help in technological improvements and popularization of solar thermal. Now, the fourth and the last potential solution given in the article is that the solar thermal industry needs to be incentivized by the government of India, since it is a much more cheaper method in producing heat as compared to other sources. So now hopefully you've understood the 4 aspects about the solar thermal industry that have been highlighted within this article. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this article from page 7. Now, the focus of this article is quite small. Now, what has happened is that the Union Health Ministry has given out an order that the name of drugs and the expiry date of those drugs will be provided in Hindi and also in regional languages during the tendering process. Now, the main drugs in which the drug names and its expiry date would be provided in Hindi and in regional language would currently include iron tablets and polio drops. Now, the main reason for this is that the Health Ministry wants to counter fake, substandard and expired drugs, especially those drugs which directly affect children born within India. Now, this is all that is required to be understood from this article, and it should be understood from the perspective of GS Paper 2 within the section Social Justice and within the subsection Issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now, we have taken this opinion-based editorial from page 9. Now, what this article highlights are various problems with the Indian Forest Acts of 1927. Now, the problems with the Indian Forest Act of 1927 has already been covered in depth by Navid sir in the Daily News Simplified video of 20th of April. And what you can do is refer to this Daily News Simplified video to understand the various problems with regards to the Indian Forest Act of 1927. Now, what we're going to do today in reference to this section is take up various questions for practice so as to further understand about the Indian Forest Act of 1927 from the perspective of your prelims examination. Now there are two questions for practice, and what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 1 is A, one only, whereby the Indian Forest Act of 1927 does provide the procedure to be followed for declaring an area to be a reserve forest, a protected forest, or a village forest. However, wildlife sanctuaries are created according to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and not according to the Indian Forest Act of 1927. Now with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is A, one only, whereby the Chief Wildlife Warden of the state has been provided power under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 to give permission for human activity inside a national park. However, with regards to statement number 2, the right of tribals and other forest dwellers has been given under the Forest Rights Act. Now there are two more questions for practice, and as you already understand, what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and wait for 5 seconds for the correct answer. Now the correct answer to question number 3 is C, two only, whereby the World Press Freedom Index is released by the Reporters Without Borders. Now statement number 2 is correct, that the World Press Freedom Index does judge countries based on abuses, transparency and pluralism, whereby including these three, there are a total of 7 parameters based on which the World Press Freedom Index judges country. However, statement number 3 is incorrect, whereby the World Press Freedom Index does provide ranking for both democratic countries and for authoritarian countries, whereby it provides ranking for roughly 180 countries. Now with regards to question number 4, the correct answer is D, Germany, whereby the International Climate Initiative is a program which is led by Germany and is currently functioning within India, Brazil, South Africa and also in Mexico. And so now with this, let us move on to the next section. Now we're going to discuss some previous year questions in reference to the articles that we have just discussed, whereby question number 1 was asked in the prelims examination of 2017, while question number 2 was asked in the prelims examination of 2004. Now what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and after 5 seconds, we'll discuss the answer. Now the correct answer to question number 1 is D, three only. Now with regards to statement number 1, you have to understand that the Election Commission is a 3-member body, while the Union Home Ministry does not decide the election schedule for the conduct of any form of election, whereby it is the Election Commission which has been provided the power under the Constitution of India to decide the election schedule. While statement number 3 is correct, the Election Commission does have the power to resolve the disputes relating to split and mergers of recognized political parties. Now with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is A, 1, 2 and 3, whereby under the Constitution of India, Election Commission has been provided with the power of superintendence, direction and conduct of free and fair elections. Similarly, it also prepares the electoral rolls for all elections to the Parliament, State Legislature and to the office of President and of Vice President. Apart from this, the Election Commission also provides recognition to political parties and allocates them election symbols. However, with regards to statement number 4, which is incorrect, the proclamation of the final verdict in cases of election dispute is handled by the Indian judiciary. And therefore, with regards to question number 2, the correct answer is A, 1, 2 and 3. Now there are two more previous year questions that we're going to discuss, whereby question number 3 was asked in the prelims examination of 2014, while question number 4 was asked in the prelims examination of 2018. And as you already understand, what you need to do is pause this video, solve both of these questions, and after which we'll discuss the answer. Now the correct answer to question number 3 is A, only one. Now as we have already understood, PV technology generates electricity by direct conversion of light into electricity, while solar thermal is a technology which uses the sun's rays to generate heat. And this heat then can be used to generate electricity, or the heat in itself then can be utilized. While statement number 2 and statement number 3 are both wrong. Whereby, as we have already understood, India has a manufacturing base for both solar thermal and for photovoltaic. Now with regards to statement number 2, PV generates DC current or direct current. Now with regards to question number 4, the correct answer is D, neither 1 nor 2. Now, there are no official reports as to what is the rank of India with regards to the manufacturing of silicon wafers. However, it is assumed that India is not one of the major markets that produces silicon wafers. And with regards to statement number 2, the solar power tariffs are decided by the Electricity Act and can also be decided by the project developer, the Ministry of Renewable Energy, and therefore there is no one basic entity which decides solar power tariffs within India. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.